All right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. On this session, we're going to be talking about some steps you can start taking towards leveraging machine learning within the travel and tourism industry. Before we get into introducing ourselves and the content, we want to kind of set the bar for what you can expect to get out of this session, right? Primarily starting with getting an understanding of what big data is, how it relates to machine learning, and how all of this actually works in the context of marketing having to do with travel and tourism, right? Next, we want to talk about what you can do, like what are the actionable steps you can take right now with what you already have at your disposal. And finally, throughout this presentation, we're going to be pausing at regular intervals to give you a chance to answer questions within a form, the link for which is in the bio or in the description below. And there, you can answer questions that will allow us to evaluate your standing and give you some personalized recommendations on what those action items can be for your big data and machine learning needs. So without further ado, let's introduce ourselves and get right into the content.
Cool, Mauri. So who are we? We are CRANT, and we are a creative machine learning company. And what we do is we help our clients to use creativity and technology to become smarter competitors. That means transforming themselves into analytical competitors that use digital transformation to make a difference and become more profitable. Some of you, I hope, we have met in February before all these pandemic started. We were at the MLS in Orlando, and we had really interesting conversations with many different DMOs and other companies in travel and tourism. So it's nice to meet you again.
Hey, I'm Michael Wise. I'm the Director of Data Science at CRANT.
Hey everyone, my name is Maurizio Boano. I'm the Director of Business Analytics at CRANT.
And I am Alvaro Melendez. I am the CEO at CRANT. And with no further ado, let's get started. So what is big data and what is machine learning? Let's start with big data. And I like this analogy because it makes it easy to understand. So small data, think of it as a book. All of us, we can read a book, we can read a couple of books, learn what we read there, and apply it to our lives, to our business, to our organizations, to our work. Now, if we look at a library, that's big data. There are so many books there, we're not going to be able to read them, even if we are like super speedy readers, because it's just too much, right? And that's where machines can help us understand everything that is in those thousands and thousands of books, which is data, and turn it into something actionable. So Michael now is going to tell us how machine learning works.
So here's the messy room example. This is a kid's messy room. We have in the past had to tell computers exactly what to do. We had to like hard code them with specific instructions. So likewise, for a kid, this would involve telling him exactly what to do with each object, each individual object, telling him where to put it away to clean his room. But that's not how we actually do it. It turns out kids are like a really good machine learning model. So as a parent, you can just go in and like start cleaning the room and showing the kid like generally how to clean the room. And you just do that a whole bunch. And the kid learns through those examples. He learns through that big data of over and over again, you cleaning the room, how to clean the room. So why are we talking about 2012? It was the year that the Mayan apocalypse was supposed to happen. Everything was supposed to end, but actually quite the opposite. A new era kind of began with machine learning, and 4 things happened in 2012 to kind of support that. So we have like AlexNet, which was like a machine learning model that like could learn to look at images. And it proved a bunch of new things were possible. It did groundbreaking things with images and reading what was in them. Number 2, Google learned to recognize cats on YouTube without knowing what a cat was. The model had no idea what a cat was, and it learned what a cat was. Number 3, there's a free class that was offered online from Andrew Ng, who was a professor at Stanford. So anybody could enroll in this, and the bar was pretty low for what you had to know. So a lot of programmers who had some like slightest interest, they didn't know what machine learning was, they started doing it, which was really impactful. And then finally, NVIDIA, some of you may have heard of the stock maybe, they released a really powerful graphics card that year. And all these 4 things push machine learning forward. And it's a lot like what happened in 1440 philosophically. So the Gutenberg printing press was invented in 1440. Because of that, reading and writing becomes standard. It spreads throughout the world like wildfire. It's amazing. Likewise, in 2012, accessible machine learning spreads throughout the world. All those events came together. And because of that, data literacy is now becoming like reading and writing of 1440. And the world's changing because of it. Our kids are going to be expected to know data literacy growing up. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing data everywhere. We're seeing machine learning everywhere in our apps, in our restaurants, in every industry.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. That's a really good overview, and it's interesting to bridge the gap with marketing and how it applies. But before we do that, let's talk about what marketing is at its core, right? And this might be a gross oversimplification, but really, as marketers, we're playing a simple game, right? And that's, how do we connect with this potential customer pool and attract them to our brand while competing with our competitors, right? Ideally, we're taking from this customer pool and also taking from our competitors' customer pool and growing our brand that way and growing our companies in that way, right? But as DMOs, this does become a little more complex because, as we know, DMOs are composed of many different entities. You have hotels, restaurants, events, a lot of moving pieces going on that are difficult to keep track of, but all ultimately contribute to you as a brand. And at the end of the day, our goal is to become the most relevant brand to attract those best customers, right? But how can you actually get started and be actionable with what you already have to become that best brand and be as attractive to those customers as you can be? Well, let's take a look at some of the pieces that might hinder you from becoming that, and then talk about what you can actually do to avoid those hindrances and transform into that brand that is the most attractive to the customer.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating thing, because that's exactly what we study and what we work with every day. In many different industries, in many different countries, with many different companies, we see one thing repeating and repeating itself. And it is like, using technology, using machine learning is not really easy, but it is very possible, as long as you are prepared to avoid falling into the traps that will appear along the way. And we have studied them for years. And what we want to do now is walk you with the form. So keep in mind, go and click to the link, keep it on your side window or somewhere, so that you can jump back and forth and pause the video when it's the moment. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the importance of culture. Culture is what defines if a company will be able to use technology, creativity, and transform or not. And we're going to look at a company in a very different industry, but that had to face, as we are facing now, a very big crisis. And this is the newspaper industry. Newspaper slowly have lost most of their market share in ad spend, not only in the US, but in the world. And the New York Times is one of the biggest players there. So what did they do to reinvent themselves and be successful, even though their category is basically disappearing? And here we look at Mark Thompson's quote, which is really interesting. And he says, for legacy companies, it's really difficult to forget about what they have been doing very successfully and focus on the future, because, of course, they were very successful. So forgetting about that is not easy. And the future and doing new things is filled with fear and makes us afraid of maybe failing. But there's no way around. If you want to innovate, you will have to go there. And the New York Times have innovated in a very successful way. If you look at their climb in subscribers in the last couple years, we see that their non-news products are growing exponentially, even though their news products is still growing, but not as fast. So they were able to turn this crisis into an opportunity, become a different company, offer different things like recipes, podcasts, and all that, and be really, really successful with that. So now Please pause this video, go to the form, and fill out question number 1.
So let's talk about what data you might have available. First, there's 3 types of data. First-party data is like the ultimate data that you want to have. This is data that nobody else has, and it's the most valuable. It might be CRM data, it might be data you directly collect from customers, something like that. And then there's second and third-party data that we're going to see on the next slide. So second-party data might be things like data that's stored on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. This is data that is shared with a partner, but competitors don't have access to it, right? It's just you and your partner. And then finally, there's third-party data, and that's something that everybody has access to. Think Google reviews, think news, think surveys that you could buy. So we took all of these things for a mall, and we combined them together. We use Google Cloud, but you can do it through spreadsheets or whatever. And you can visualize and you can build things out of this data after you unify it. So we did that, and we developed this thing called a brand love score. So a lot of that data came from like Google Maps, for example. So we look at the review data over time, and we're able to see how relevant each brand is, how much do people love each of these brands over time. Now this is really interesting because malls are in a lot of ways an attraction. So how much do people like want to go to the attraction? How much do people love the attraction? So pause the video for a moment, go answer question 2.
Hey guys, welcome back. So yeah, thanks Michael for that explanation on first, second, and third-party data. It's super useful to understand what type of data you have, its quality, and how it can be implemented, of course. But possibly as important is also where that data is being stored, right? And we see that there's pretty much 3 different locations of where data is typically stored, starting with the most basic, which is on your computer's hard drive, locally, you and your colleagues storing stuff. Obviously, that makes it difficult to collaborate and share. And so some companies move to this next phase, which is on-prem servers, which are also useful because they expand your memory and people can start collaborating a bit more. But really the cream of the crop is when you get to working in the cloud on products like Google Cloud, because they go beyond storage, right? They transcend into this ability to apply machine learning models and other cool features to the data that you have stored. And we actually see that as you kind of progress through this landscape, your analytical advantage also increases. And a good example of this is a cruise line that we worked with, that we were storing their digital media data already on the cloud, and we started collecting social listening data about how the public was talking about their brand. And because of this, because all this data was stored on the cloud, we were able to perform kind of these on-the-fly analyses of both these data sets put together. So it's super powerful, and it really helps to highlight kind of the importance of not only having the right data, but storing it in the right place. So with that, please jump over to the form. Check out question 3, where we want to get to know a little bit about how you're currently storing your data.
Okay, so I hope you did get curious about the cloud and about everything that you can do with the data on the cloud. It will definitely give you an advantage for this new topic, which is what is your potential for differentiation? And differentiation, we all know, is very, very important, because that's going to be the reason why somebody chooses to go to your place instead of your competitors, right? So if you haven't done this, I recommend reading this book, Competing on Analytics. It explains in detail, but with very, very rich information, how the market changed and how we stopped competing for having the best price, having the best product or the best service, and moved into being able to make the best decisions, being faster, being leaner, being more relevant and more agile. And machine learning and technology play a big role in this, as you can see in this graph. Machine learning is the thing that gives you the highest competitive advantage, once it's mastered. In the example that we're going to share with you now, we're going to look at a brand and how this brand is composed of different territories that make up the brand. In this example, we're going to talk about innovation, happiness, trust, and sustainability. And like a music piece, not everything can be super loud. We have to equalize it so that it sounds beautifully and it is a sound that is interesting for people. The same goes with the brand. So let's look at the dashboard for a second. And what we will see here is that we can look at the territory specifically and see how our brand is having an impact in the share of voice. How much content are we generating in the innovation topic? And then how engaging is that being? Means how are people reacting to what we're putting out there? So in this case, innovation is pretty good. But if we look at happiness, for example, our brand has almost 30% of share of voice in happiness, but then only 16% of share of engagement. That means this competitor, competitor A, is being much, much more relevant than our brand in happiness. And this is something that we want to have an eye on and work actively to keep it healthy and keep it balanced. And now, please press pause and go and answer question 4. Okay, so differentiation, check. Now let's look at how open are you to experimentation. And an experimentation is an interesting thing because when we were kids, every child is very open to experimentation, sometimes too much, but they have the benefit of not knowing what is not possible. They're not afraid of trying new things because they still don't know the concept of failure. That's something that we get educated into our mind over time. And now, if we want to be an innovative company, we have to get that out of our mind and open up again and think like a child, face new challenges, try with the data that we have, combine it with other data that we don't have, as Michael and Mauricio have explained, third-party data that is available with first-party data that we might have, use technology and try something new. And that something new might give us a competitive advantage that nobody else has. That will only happen through experimentation. Let's look at these examples. Very successful companies do a lot of experimentation. This is the number of experiments they do every year. And we like to highlight the Amazon example because Jeff Bezos says he's focused and his team is focused on trying to get experiments to be as fast and as cheap as possible because that will allow them to do much more experiments. And each experiment will give them information that they couldn't get anywhere else and they couldn't get in any other way. So it's unique information of high value. That's why Amazon, Netflix, Google, and all these companies are being so successful. Also, if we look at the McKinsey report, where we see how companies perform that mix creativity and data, means experiment with it, are more successful than the ones that keep those things separated and are a little shy in the experimentation field. So please, now pause this video, go to the forum and fill out question 5.
So Alvaro, thanks for that. Machine learning is a really great way to experiment. So it's all about coming up with ideas and testing them and seeing what machine learning can do with those ideas. So how familiar are you with machine learning? You might know it's really good with spreadsheets and databases where you have like a lot of structured data. But in 2020, it's possible to do a lot of other things. We perceive up to 80% of all impressions through our site, which is really important for brands. So what we see is like 80% of the influence for a brand. And especially in travel and tourism, Instagram is really, really important. So images are really, really important for brand portrayal with DMOs and similar organizations. In 2020, we don't just have to deal with like databases of and Excel files. We can deal with images. We can run those through machine learning models, which is awesome. So we can like take this image and have a machine say, hey, there's 2 people in here. I'm pretty sure that's a tree over there, and there's a boat. It can identify and label everything in this image. So we don't just do that for one image, but we do it for like a whole Instagram profile. So here in this video, you'll see that we did this on like the Walt Disney World profile. So image by image, we have the machine go through and look at the images and say what's in the image. So it's processing. It found, hey, in this image, we have a lot of the color yellow. We have some people interacting. There's flowers. Vacation is tagged also. So these models are pretty good. We take all those labels for every single image, not just that one, and we combine them. So we get like this overall view of an Instagram profile, and then we can compare that profile against competitors. So a lot is possible in 2020. We do that for DMOs, for example. These are some real locations we did. And we can summarize that. DMO 1, as you can imagine, when we look at the plot, we see a lot of beach and we see a lot of ocean in purple on the left. DMO 2, we saw a lot of city and architecture. And then DMO 3 is a lot described by food and tourism. And this is the feeling that you'll get as a user if you're scrolling through a brand's Instagram profile, or every single time you see them show up in the feed, this is your impression of them.
Thanks, Mike, for that example. I think it really helps to highlight the power that machine learning can provide us with in being able to understand unstructured data like images, right? So some takeaways we want you to have from this session we had today is not to wait to start gathering data if you aren't already, or start evaluating how you can use that data in new ways to experiment and try new things. Also, please remember to go and finish the form. There should be 1 question left. After you do that, you can submit. And we'll be taking a look at these submissions and kind of evaluating them and giving you responses. So we'll be replying after analyzing your answers to give you an idea of what are the next steps you can take so you can actually have kind of those action items on what you can do with what you already have, right? And finally, we're not going away. This is just the beginning of our series with eTourism Summit. So please join us for our panel on the 22nd, followed by our workshop on the 28th, where we're going to be able to discuss these things in person, live with you directly. And finally, as a result of that workshop, we'll be choosing a company to partner with to generate a case study that we'll be presenting at the conference in November in Orlando. So we look forward to seeing you, and thanks for joining us.